Hey guys, um, Austin here, and this is probably going to get lost somewhere on the internet. Maybe someone will find it in 10 years. It'll make a little bit more sense then. Who knows? Um, but time frame wise, it's 2017. Modern Warfare Remastered just got supply drops, and I'm going to be talking about multiplayer as a game, as part of the gaming industry. Something you should know about me. I'm a very single player oriented person. I play games for the story, and multiplayer is it's cool. It's there. I like it sometimes, I play multiplayer. But I'm not one of those people who just plays a multiplayer only game for weeks out, weeks on end, year after year. I just can't do that. And I don't know, it's always this multiplayer. It confuses me. I mean, you have all these people buying it, and so they can play with each other across the world. But why? I mean, they play. You buy it so they can play with each other. Yeah, but after you buy one multiplayer game, why do you need to buy another? Like, okay, different genre. You have a shooter, and you have a racing game. Multiplayer games, completely different. But if you have a driving game, you have a shooter game, do you need to buy another driving game? Yeah, you need it for new cars or, new, in the shooter's case, new weapons or something. I'm like, okay, well, if you're a game company and you do a racing game and you release the game with this many cars, and then down the line you just add more cars. And you sell them, little DLC things. Why would you ever make another game? You can just add to the one you've already made. You don't have to spend as much resources. You can still get money from it. Oh, well, it gets outdated and the technology is, well, if it's a console game, yeah, you have to move with generations, but if it's like PC game, you can just, put it on a easily modifiable engine that can get upscaled as time progresses, That's how a lot of PC gamers is like, why would I buy a remastered? I can just put my computer in the highest settings. Done. It's remastered. Remastered is more for like consoles. And I mean, oh well, it has to balance the meta and stuff. Well, yeah, you do that in patches, updates. But if you just made one good driving game, just one, and just added to it forever, why would you need because as soon as you make another game, you're going to have people who don't like that game. They like the old one better, so they're not going to buy the new one. You've lost a bunch of fan base. If you keep adding stuff to the game, well, then you have a fan base, and they're like, whoa, new stuff, cool. So you don't have people leaving because there's nothing to do and it's boring. Keep them forever. I mean, and ever. And it's not like you're with single player. You have stories, you have characters, you have ideas. Multiplayer, there's none of that. It's just stuff. You just add stuff, more stuff, more stuff. I mean, you can get crazy and they're like, oh, the game is like 4,000 cars. It's like, yeah, but then you can get more people. If you're advertising, hey, we got 4,000 cars. We're the ultimate driving game. I mean, no other company at that point is gonna be able to say, hey, well, we got a new racing game out. and it's got 200 cars. Yep, the other one has way more, and more people playing it that have already been playing it. Why would I buy the new one? I don't understand. Shooters. I mean, everyone's getting mad about supply drops, supply drops, supply drops. But if they just made them DLC, like in Black Ops 1, there was DLC weapons. But you had to pay, but you were guaranteed it. Where now everyone's mad because it's a chance. But if you're the company, you're obviously doing it for profits. But why make another game? Modern Warfare 2. Or Modern Warfare. Any of those games, I mean, older Call of Duties, relative to now. Most people hail those as being great games. And that's why a lot of people bought Modern Warfare Remastered, bundled with Infinite Warfare. They didn't care about Infinite Warfare. I'm not going to play that. I'm going to play the old, good game. But if they literally just kept Modern Warfare servers running and they just added or cleaned up what they did with little patches, whatever, it's the same game. There's nothing groundbreaking. And for consoles, it makes sense. You know, they have limits. There's limitations in the hardware, and so you need to do remasters so that you can upgrade the tech and stuff. But without consoles, if it's just PCs, no consoles, there'd be no new games, but no new multiplayer games. Unless they're completely brand new ideas. But even then, I mean, why? Why is the game industry made out of franchises then? I mean, it seems counterintuitive that great game franchises aren't multiplayer focused. If they're multiplayer focused, they aren't a franchise. They usually have 1-2 games, which is counteractive because you think Call of Duty, oh, it's a big multiplayer game, it has lots of games. But if you just had the multiplayer, I don't think there'd be nearly as many Call of Duties. I don't think there would be, because why waste all the money and effort and stuff to try and resell the same game just with maybe some different mechanics or stuff? They could have just implemented little bitty changes. And oh, well, what about the people who believe in the original way the game was made and it's too many changes? Well, you condition them. Condition them to small changes. That's how games like Dota 2 have survived for long, is they just little bitty changes. Here and there, here and there, here and there, here and there, here. Just to spice it up. Just little stuff. And then you look at the progression is huge. But of course they're probably, oh, well, you can always just play the core classic version, which you notice in some Call of Duty they have a classic mode of maps and stuff. I don't see many people playing classic. Why? Because that was way back then. The new mechanics are so much better. See? I don't get it though. I understand why single player games get sequels. There's stuff to go off of. Multiplayer, there's nothing to go off of. You want to expand the lore, the universe. Just add in a faction. So, DLC, expansion, done. World of Warcraft, easy thing. Same game. Just expand. But even that is based off of, a lore, story bits that expand, so it's weird. If it weren't for consoles, we wouldn't have sequels, really. The way games are nowadays. So why do we still have sequels then? I mean, it seems like I answered my own questions because we have consoles, but it's weird to think about. I mean, theoretically speaking, all the games that have ever been a franchise could have just been additional adventures, an expansion of one game. Oh, they cleaned up mechanics or changed the... You can still do that, but... Whereas before, you change too much and then you have to do a whole new game. Nowadays, it makes sense for single-player games where the mechanics are just so much different. Call of Duty. Let's say that. Let's say what if there was just one, the Call of Duty game. You could play Call of Duty 3, World War, all the way up to Infinite Warfare in this one game. And they would separate it by section. So, pay $30, $40, whatever. And you get to play the new Infinite Warfare expansion with laser guns and all these crazy mechanics. The games would get too big in size. Well, World of Warcraft has, what, like 8 expansions or something? I don't know exactly a number. Still not... People still play it? I mean, you don't have to download all of them. You don't have to play the new Infinite Warfare expansion. It's there, though, if you want it. You can still keep playing the other ones. It just... I don't understand how does this system work? Why do we have our Battlefield 1s instead of World War I expansion pack? It has to be because of consoles. Consoles, you hit a limitation, so the only way to go past that is to make a new generation, which calls for a new game. You kind of, I mean, you could release it, but like look at Black Ops 3. I mean, I'm using a lot of Call of Duty here, but it's the easy example I can use. The PS4 or Xbox One version is way different from the 360 and PS3 version, just in scale and everything. But I don't know, it's just I feel like the only reason we have sequels is for single player games. It's not for multiplayer. It's not. I mean, you want to expand the story, but it's in a multiplayer focused game. It's an expansion. It's not a new sequel. You don't need to make a sequel. You'd just be basically copying all the assets and engine stuff and everything, but you could completely separate, compartmentalize it. Why would you need to make a new game unless it had to do single player? Even single player, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you add a DLC campaign mission. I mean, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, that's the game that comes to my mind. It has little DLC, but it's the same game, same engine and stuff. And there's separate stories, so why do we have sequels? If not for the limits in hardware, why do we have sequels? Is it because people like to buy new things just because they think it's new? But a new expansion, it's new. It's not a new game. But it is. And you're thinking, oh, well, what about those people who don't have internet? They can't download it. You can buy it like a little... I mean, You don't have to. You can, back in the day, you buy discs, and then put them in your computer and then download it. And that's where it comes, and this is where it all comes to a head. For people who don't have internet, who don't download content from the internet, they have to get a physical install of it. It's a new game. So there's a reason why. It's kind of ironic to think about in this super connected world, a game of multiplayer, that if you wanted to be solo, I mean, you wouldn't need another expansion if it's a multiplayer game, because you wouldn't be playing multiplayer because you can't play multiplayer. So the only reason why you would do is single player. So single player, non-multiplayer online games. And the reason we have sequels. Only reason. Because you need to literally put a new disc in, or a new chip, or whatever it is, to play the game. But I wonder how many sales really figures are of people who are offline. I mean, people were talking, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago, about, GameStop's going out of business because disc-based stuff is just starting to stop because everything is online now. I'm like, well, there has to be a market there for discs. Otherwise, companies wouldn't make it. If it's not profitable, they won't do it. So here's my fear. And this is kind of weird to think about, theoretically, if it weren't for people who need discs, if everything was online, you could buy one game, one Call of Duty, one Battlefield, one one Mario game. Yeah, I'll throw in Mario. And then just buy all the updates, buy all the expansions, forever. Never play anything different. Only thing we would play different would be completely brand new ideas. So then you wouldn't have sequels. You would only have the game. With the World of Warcraft is a franchise, which is weird to think about because it used to have sequels, now it doesn't. What if every game was like World of Warcraft, where there was just a base game and then all these expansions? And people are like, well, maybe it's to improve accessibility to newcomers. But it's like, yeah, but I mean, you try and get someone into Star Wars. You're going to say, hey, watch this movie in about 2 years. Come back and maybe watch this one. Or, hey, you should start with the third movie in the trilogy instead of the first movie. I'm speaking original trilogy, not episode 1, episode... Anyway, not the point. It's because people don't like jumping really into the middle of things unless there's a good enough reason, or if it's different enough that it's its own thing. And that's another thing about sequels, is that sequels, some of them have to be their own thing. Like you could say, between Crash Bandicoot 1 and 2, 2's its own thing. It's very different. Kingdom Hearts is another game that comes to mind. 1 and 2, very different games. Very different. But if everything is just one game, you had one Call of Duty game, one Mario game, one Zelda game, what would that look like? Would it be this just long list of all these expansions you could get? spin-offs. I mean, spin-offs would become the sequels, or what we would call now sequels. They'd be spin-offs because they can't. Well, I would say sequels are too different from the game that they could be their own thing, but they're not. And this is the funny thing, is like you have to figure out what point does Mario, like let's say Mario and then Mario Kart. Okay. Mario Kart is its own thing now. It's completely its own thing. It's always been its own thing, kind of. It's been a spin-off, but it's its own franchise now. At what point you would have this one game, if you had just the Mario game, you'd have 2D, you'd have your tennis, your bowling, your baseball, your everything, and like everything else, and then from there it would splinter off into all these different expansions. It would be a nightmare to try and keep track of all that. But it would be the game. So at what point does a game separate itself from its main brother, or its main franchise? At what point does a game truly become something different, yet still familiar to be considered under the main franchise, but be a franchise in itself? It's weird to think about. But like, there are some games that even with spin-offs, like Dance Dance Revolution, they have lots of spin-offs with different franchises. Guitar Hero, they had spin-offs with franchises, but they would all come together as one game, you know, one DDR game, one Guitar Hero game with all this little extra side stuff. But then the bigger franchises like Mario, would you have the Mario game, then the Mario sports games, and then just add them? Like, how would you distinguish that? How? What does this mean for us right now as a gaming industry? I don't know. From a consumer's point of view, me personally, I like new games. New games are ways that developers can come up with new ideas, test them out, and the thing is, if they do well, they do well. If they do bad, well, they do bad. But I don't think we'd be stuck playing the same game forever. And what point has World of Warcraft? It's still the same game. So like 8 expansions, whatever number it is now. At what point, though, is it more than World of Warcraft, just the base? It's become this Titan thing. I don't know. I don't know where that line is. If you guys know why companies make sequels at all, or you know, why they don't just make one good game and then put it on life support forever and just keep it alive for as long as possible, like Steam does with like every single game ever they've made? No, not really, but you know. At what point do developers have to make a new game? If they didn't have console restrictions, they didn't have story, nothing narratively that they need to put in a new game, not an add-on. They can't. It's too big to put as an add-on. I don't know. Just my 2 cents, and well, a little more than 2 cents, but you know, I think where we are right now is strange, to say the least. And who knows? In maybe a year, maybe more, we'll be in a completely different place than we are now, and all of this will make a lick of sense because we're now we've changed so drastically, and it doesn't apply anymore. Maybe I'm, getting worked out about nothing, or maybe this is a turning point where people will look back and say, hey, people were onto something at this time. Something was happening. So, anyway, this was a comprehensive look, I guess. Well, comprehensive but not very conclusive look into multiplayer games, sequels, gaming as general. If you like the video, share with friends, relatives, literally anyone at this point. I mean, anyone who you think would find this interesting. I don't expect much. I'm just one guy just talking about how he thinks, but feel free to discuss in the comments or anything. I'll catch you guys later.